Hey everybody, it's Dan from Men Need to Be Heard. I'm back with another show for you, and this one's going to be a good one because I have a little surprise. I have a fellow TikToker, fellow YouTuber, let me say that 3 times fast, and he happens to be a lawyer. No, we're not going to hold that against him. We like lawyers here. David Pizzara. Did I say that right, David?
You got it, Dan. How are you, man?
I am fan-freaking-tastic, as I like to say. So just tell us a little bit about yourself, David. Who you are, what you do, your channels, and anything else you want to share with the audience.
I am a contradiction in terms. I am a single gay man who fights for fathers.
Okay.
So go figure that one out. 24 years ago, my partner and I started our law firm, and I wanted to do business law. And I would go to the Chamber of Commerce meeting in the Rotary Club and have the rubber chicken. And I would be like, yeah, I want to help you with your LLCs and your business development plans. And no one wanted to talk to me.
Okay.
And at the end of my little pitch, I would be like, yeah, my partner does family law. And immediately you would be like, can he lower my child support? Can he get me out of this bad marriage? And I'd be like, yeah, of course. And so I was signing up all of these people to work for him, right? All this work for him. And before I knew it, his calendar was so full. He was like, hey, you got to cover this hearing for me. And I'm like, what? And before I knew it, my calendar was full. And 24 years later, I've been fighting over children in Tupperware for 20 plus years now.
Tupperware?
Dude, we fight over some pretty petty things, I got to say.
Oh, I've been there, my friend. I've been there. I spent 17 years in family court, and I'm not an attorney. And for about 10 of them, and this is not an exaggeration, we were in court pretty much every single month.
Yeah.
My ex had an attorney, and he loved to file motions because he made a lot of money doing that.
And she evidently had endless funds.
Her husband, who she left me for, was a doctor and made quite a bit of money, so she had the funds, and not to toot my own horn, but I got pretty well versed in family law myself. I'm not an attorney. Let me say full up, everything I say is just my opinion. It means nothing. Okay, I'm not giving legal advice.
I'm gonna stop you on that one, Dan. You know, the reality is you've got 17 years of experience in family court. Your opinion does count.
Well, I appreciate you saying that because I do try and help guys out with it. And one of the objectives I had for having you on is to one of the things I think guys struggle with is realistic expectations, or
can we just label that like understatement of the
year?
deck? Well, no, let's just go understatement of all time.
There you go. I remembered the first time I went into family court. I was a wide-eyed, 31-year-old, 32.
Can I just pitch, maybe this is what I think you're going to say, and then tell me how close I am?
Go for it. I love it.
So I think you're going to go into court, and you're going to say, I'm going to tell the judge I'm a good dad. I want half custody, and she'll tell you that I'm a good dad.
That's pretty much it, yeah.
How'd that go for you?
Yes, 17 years later,
Right, exactly.
I actually ended up getting custody in the long run. So...
For you.
It was like I said, I was like a deer in the headlights. I thought the truth mattered, if I can be so blunt. I found out rather quickly that law and order was not what really happened in the courtroom.
No.
And ultimately, I found a very good attorney, and I want to touch a little bit about that down the road here. Who was fantastic and helped me a lot, but also wasn't trying to get every dollar out of me she could.
Right.
She figured out pretty fast that I'm not dumb. I can go learn stuff, and I did. I got on Westlaw. I was reading case law. And so a lot of times she would say, you don't need me for this, right?
Yeah.
And I got into the point where I was writing a lot of the paperwork myself. So I would write it, send it to her, and rather than pay her to do it, which we both know it's a paralegal doing it, not her, but I saved myself that money. That's one of the things I want to talk about down the road
Sure.
with you. But anyway, long story short, after about 10 years and numerous violations on her part, I did end up getting custody, but we still battled it out. I spent over $100,000 in legal fees.
Yeah.
Last I knew, she was over 300. Now, our
That's not hard to do.
no, our kids
Not
are
hard to
all
do.
out. You know, we're my youngest is 26. I'm done.
Good.
You know, but
But
my
so to
goal.
bring back, so I want to bring this back because
Sure.
you said like my opinion doesn't count. And I would say, no, wait, your experience does matter. And here's why I think that's really important.
Okay.
Women talk amongst themselves and strategize their divorces and their child custody battles over coffee at the nail salon, at their hair salon, at the park with the kids. I'm pretty sure they do it in the bathroom when they go talk, like to touch up their makeup. Men don't discuss this stuff.
No, they do not.
So they don't have any idea when they're going into court, which is why they have that deer in the headlights experience where they're like, well, I'm just going to tell them I'm a good dad. And I just want to like grab them and shake them and be like, yeah, you and every other man that's ever walked in this courthouse.
Yep.
And the judge has heard that, and it means exactly zero. Because everybody says that.
Yeah.
And you got to show them. You got to prove it.
And
you got to strategize it. And your experience is really valuable for all the men that you're talking to because they don't know about it. They're not going to walk in Monday morning and talk to their buddies about what's going on and be like, well, yeah, this is what happened in my divorce, and this is how I beat her. No one does that.
No,
They're talking about the stupid freaking Super Bowl game, thinking like that's important.
It's funny because I did at one point run a peer group for domestic violence men who were survivors of it. And we would start talking a little bit about it, right? Because almost inevitably they ended up in, well, Supreme Court. New York was Supreme Court for the divorce and family court for any custody issues.
Right.
And, I would try and educate them. And they're like, no. They're disbelief, right?
Unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
And that's why, I'm trying to do that with this podcast, with some of the videos I do. I know the videos you do, you're doing the same thing because the reality is you're right. Guys do not talk about it. And that creates a couple issues. One, you don't know what you're walking into, but two, the mental anguish that you're going to deal with it. At least if you kind of know ahead of time, you can prepare a little bit. I was blown away. I mean, I could not believe the things that were being said. And I'm sitting here going, none of this is true. And I would try and speak and say, well, none of it's, well, the court didn't care, right? It was.
Did the court, okay, this is always one of those hard calls because it's like, did the court really not care? Or did the court just dismiss your statements because your statement was, that's not true. You don't have anything to back up what you're actually saying. Which I find frequently is what happens.
In the first case, it was the judge didn't care. He just hated men.
Okay.
All right. But to your point, he got out. He actually lost his election. We got another one after that, who, by the way, I'm on a first name basis with because I used to run into him. I've moved since then, but I was on a first name basis. I used to run into him in town. Hey, Courtney, how you doing? Oh, nice to see you, Dan. Blah, blah. We were like best buddies outside the courtroom. Because he kind of finally figured it out. It only took him 10 years, but he did figure it out, right? But the thing that I would tell guys, and feel free to chime in on this, is take some time and go talk to someone that's been through family court, who's dealt with this. Yes, speak to your attorney, but also speak to someone who's dealt with it because the attorney's going to talk about the legal side, and they do a great job. At least mine did. But understanding the emotional side of it. And one of the things I talked about last week with Lindsay, Squirrely Girl 88, is find someone that can be your confidant. Don't send an email to your ex until somebody else has read it. And don't pay your attorney to do it, right? But have that person that is not going to put up with your bullshit, going to call you out on it. I was fortunate I had that person, and I've tried to be that person for others because, as you know, the courts don't like emotion. They like facts. And that's the number one thing I would say that guys need to understand is you've got to learn to take the emotion out of it as best you can. What are your thoughts on
Right.
that?
I 100%, 100%. And that's one of the reasons why I pulled together the dad support group. And we're starting that. We're trying to get dads to talk to each other because so often they fall in love, they get in that relationship, and all of a sudden their friends have faded away. And now all of her friends are his friends, which is great up until the breakup happens. And then it's a matter of who am I? Where are my friends? Where's my support network? And it's all gone. And they've got no one to develop that relationship with where they can go and share what's going on because they do need that feedback. They have to have it because otherwise you're just living in the pain and the hurt and the fear and the anxiety. And that's what's going to drive all of those text messages, the voice messages, that email. It's all going to get used against you. It's all bad. None of that's going to be good for you.
Yep.
Like, worst thing you could do.
Anything you say can and will be used against you in court.
And twisted against you.
Oh,
I mean,
my
it's
friend, you aren't kidding.
brutal.
You know, and that's why one of the things I always tell guys, like I said, have somebody else read your email, but really look at it because it will be twisted. That's the problem with written word as opposed to verbal is there's no nuance behind it. There's no.
Not only is there no nuance behind it, but if you're on some easily manipulatable format, text messages, for example, email, for example, that the other side who might, it doesn't happen often, but occasionally there's somebody out there who's a little bit too malicious and devious, and they're willing to play hard and fast and dirty.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this because this is what happened to more than one of my clients. There's an entire text message chain that goes back and forth, and it's like her comment, his comment, her comment, his comment, her comment, his comment. And she has systematically gone back and deleted all of his comments and submits these screenshots of what looks to be hundreds of text messages from him to her as evidence of how he's abusing her and harassing her.
Oh, boy.
And it's pitched as he's just obsessively texting me. And a judge they're not going to read through all of it and figure out like there's something missing.
No, they're not.
They're going to look at it like, okay, there's 5 pages of the same thing.
Yep.
Boom, done. Great. And you would think I would have the client that I can just be like, well, no problem. Print out the screenshots showing your responses. Got mad. I deleted them all.
Oh, dude. No.
I'm like,
Oh, no. Never delete anything.
okay. I get you don't want to look at all that stuff. At least take screenshots, put it in a picture, and then delete it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the little things like that little bit of documentary evidence that would have saved this guy's butt, like hugely.
That was one of the things. If anything, I overwhelmed my attorney with stuff because I, like you. Now, my divorce for the most part was prior to smartphones. Like the iPhone had just come out towards the tail end of ours, but I saved everything. And the thing that I did, which really helped me in court, was I kept a journal. So if we had a conversation, I had a notebook with me all the time. If I had a conversation with my ex, I would put notes in there. Now, at one point I had to go up on the stand, and her attorney was trying not to let me have my notebook. And they went back and forth, but ultimately I got my notebook.
Yeah, good.
And I was, he's tried to trip me up on something. I said, wait a minute, once I turned a couple pages, went and found it. And I could tell the judge was like, oh shit. All right. But the other side of it was, I know I gave my attorney probably way more than I needed to, but my viewpoint always was give more than you need because you never know what they can use.
I am doing a divorce right now with a guy who he does IT work for Big 5 law firms.
Okay.
We have a drive on that what is it, OneDrive, the Microsoft OneDrive?
Yep.
It has every document cross-referenced, indexed in a folder. perfectly identified as exactly what it is. It's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen from a legal document perspective.
Uh-huh.
It's so overwhelming.
It is, and you're going to pay to have
And
you
it's
read it.
great. And
Yeah,
it's freaking great
it is.
because every time I need something, I'm like, where is that? And he's like, it's right here.
Yeah. Here's the index. Go get it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but be aware that, to be fair to the attorneys, they're going to charge you to read that stuff. If so, be mindful of that. One of the things I think people, guys especially, don't understand. Your attorney doesn't work for free. Usually, I don't know what you bill in, but mine was 6-minute increments. So if I
Yeah,
called
I
her,
usually do. Yeah.
yeah.
Tenth of an hour, 6 minutes is usually what we
So,
bill in.
when you're calling to whine and cry, that is not the most productive amount of way of spending your money. My advice
No.
again goes back to find that confidant. Your attorney's there to help you
Get a
legally.
therapist.
There you go.
Like, let's get into therapy
There
and
you go.
actually,
Yeah.
you went through you're going through a breakup. And even assuming you went into the relationship and you are very healthy mentally, which is a huge assumption in America, but we're going to make that assumption.
Good point, though.
You've gone into a relationship that has now turned toxic and dysfunctional. Something happened in there to make it not work anymore.
Right.
Whether it was all of them, which is possible, but not likely. The scenario probably is it's partly them and partly you, because the reality is Mother Teresa didn't marry Hitler. Just saying, both parties probably played a part. And so you've got something that needs to be worked out in therapy, even if it's just the grief of losing the relationship and the family life that you have.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that needs to be worked through, and it should be worked through in a therapeutic environment, because that grief and the anger and the hurt and the anxiety and the fears will bleed through everything else that's going on in your life. It will bleed through the messages. It will bleed through your negotiations. It will bleed through and how you actually approach the conversation with the judge.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're walking in there and you're going, she lied to me, she stole my kids, and she promised me, and
it's never going to work.
Judge doesn't care. You know what? Yeah, she lied to get the kids out of state. Guess what? They didn't come back after 2 weeks, and you waited another, I don't know, let's say 5-6 months to then do something. Her lie doesn't really carry that much weight anymore because you didn't care that much.
No. I love that we're having this conversation, because I think this will really help guys, is because like we talked about, guys go in deer in the headlights like I did. You get very emotional. It is an emotional time. I did have some therapy during mine,
Good.
mostly because, like I said, I was 30, 31 years old. I had no idea what the hell was going on. I basically, came. Now, she was having affairs. I forgave her. I came home one day. The house was empty. Her and the kids were gone. That's what I got, right? And I'm not saying that to get sympathy or anything like that, but that's what happened to me. It's not a story I haven't heard a few hundred times from other guys, right? That's
Right.
reality. So you're in that, like, what the hell just happened? Then you get a summons, right? Then you go to family court, or, well, it was Supreme Court and family court in my case, but I hadn't had an attorney at that point. I walked in there alone. What a dumbass I was, right? And
That's
so one of the things that I think you touched on is, one, well, get confident that I talked about. Therapist would be a good idea. But let's talk just briefly about, how do you find a good quality attorney? Because there's some very good ones and there's some very bad ones. Most are somewhere in between, obviously. But what would you recommend to a guy as far as looking for an attorney?
Okay, so there's generally, I think, two types of lawyers that end up in family court. There's those that are just in it to fight and charge a ton of money, and they don't really care. They're in it just to fight and do the battle, and they enjoy the battle about everything. Mm-hmm. Whether it's a battle over picking a Bobby from soccer practice at 5 p.m., or whether it's, we're going to absolutely have to have the tax returns from 2007 because they're going to show some smoking gun that's going to make all the millions of dollars that have been hidden suddenly hers. Whatever. The other side of that is the lawyers who tend to have no experience, who are new at this, and they're coming in cheap, and they're coming in and they're trying to make some bones. They're trying to learn the art of family law. And guys will spend, $200-300, and they think that they're actually being smart. And the reality is that's not the right solution. The
Okay.
better solution is to go hire that lawyer that's like whatever in your town is, whoever's the most expensive, and get like an hour or two consultation with them to really break down every single issue and then figure out like what do I have to deal with? Because frequently they're going in and they're just getting a bunch of bullshit. They're being told, well, we're going to win. It's like, okay, but on what? Like, what are we winning? Are we
Right.
winning on child custody? Are we winning on parenting time? Are we winning on child support? Are we winning on assets? Are we winning on separate property? Like, unless you have a real understanding of what the issues are in your case, just being told this rah of we're going to win, we're going to crush the other side, which frequently happens a lot with the newer lawyers who are coming in, who are just like wanting to make a bone. What they want to make their bones. They want to like try and prove how tough they are. And it's sort of like the baby rattler. They just want to do everything. And it's just a bad idea. You really need somebody who's probably got my guess. I generally tell people like don't talk to anybody unless they've got about 7 years plus experience in family court.
Okay, that's a
And
really good point.
strictly
Yeah.
and strictly family court.
Okay.
Like those guys, I see there's this one guy. His website is like, we take care of everything. Okay, he's a one-man band. Let's start there. Criminal, bankruptcy, tax, real estate planning, personal injury, lemon law, ADA law. But my specialty is family law. Dude, come on now. That's just not cutting it. Because what people have to remember is this. Family law covers every other area in your world. So in family, as a family lawyer, I do real estate because people own homes and we have to figure out like where did the down payment come from? How's that get paid back?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to handle the transaction to sell it? Oh, one party wants to buy the other one out. So we're touching on real estate. We're touching on tax because, oh, we've had to pay taxes, but nobody's actually paid the taxes because we've been living beyond our means for the last 7 years, which might explain the $500,000 we owe the IRS
Oh boy.
that she doesn't want to pay back because, well, that's his debt. I'm not quite sure how that happened, but it's his debt. We're going to cut across schooling issues. We're going to cut across religious issues. We're going to cut across bankruptcy issues. We're going to come across personal injury issues, disability issues, HR issues, business planning issues, estate planning issues. So as a family lawyer, you really have to have a lot of experience because you're cutting across all these areas. But to say that I specialize in any of them is absolute horseshit. Like, I know my way around a will. I don't know my way around intricacies of multi-million-dollar estate planning. Like, you need to go see a specialist for that.
Yeah.
But when it comes to like you walk into my office and we're going to file for divorce, it's like, okay, let's start with like immediately doing something about your will. Like that needs to get dealt with immediately. Let's break that joint tenancy on the real estate because if you die, we don't want her inheriting all of it right away. You still want your half to go to your kids from another marriage, your kids from your baby mama, your kids from your future baby mama, whatever.
You know, it's interesting you say that because I remember talking with my attorney. Her name was Karen.
No.
Yeah, she was Karen, and she had the haircut too. Believe it or not, she was a Karen. She was a Karen before there were Karens. But man, in a courtroom, woof! I was thankful every single time that she was my attorney because let me tell you, she was
Yeah.
brutal. But anyway, um, I remember her saying things like along what you're talking about is that my specialty is family law. That's all she did.
Mm-hmm.
And the things you're talking about, she would farm out. She's like, look, I know how to, like you said, I know how to do a will. That's not my specialty. Go see this guy. He'll do your will for you. Because that's all she did was family court. She was in family court 8 hours a day. I mean, she was constantly there. But it was, like she said, this is what I do. My job is to help you navigate through Supreme Court and family court. My job is not to write your will. That's, go see this person. I had some business things going on. Nope. she knows what it is. Like you said, right? You have an idea. Obviously, you
Right.
learned it in law school, but that's not what their specialty was. And that, that was one of the cautions that I was going to try and bring up was don't look for that all-in-one attorney. Find a family court attorney or a family law
Absolutely.
attorney, um, because I've seen the other side of it, and
Yeah,
it's
and
not
unless you
faulting the
actually
attorney.
have cousin Vinny,
Oh God,
don't go to that guy who's just starting out. Like,
yeah, get
not
somebody.
the right.
So you think about 7 years experience? Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it takes a while for people to really get this and really understand it because it's all there's another factor here, and that's the psychology of it.
Hmm.
And the reality is that most cases that are actually going in front of a judge, we're dealing with the narcissist on one side and or borderline on the other. Um, there's usually some major psychological issue going on in any really highly contested case. Because the reality is, any normal couple who are just going through a breakup are not going to want to spend, let's just say, 6 to 12 months, and let's call it $100,000 divvying up their assets and their kids.
Hmm.
There's no reason for it. Rational people who are emotionally stable and mentally capable should be able to put aside their anger and their hurt, recognize our relationship has changed, and now, okay, I've got a little bit of hurt, but let's get through this. Let's get to a new family structure
Hmm.
that's going to allow us to move on and not damage our kids. And most of those people don't end up in family court. Maybe once. Maybe you'll end up in once just to like get the paperwork done, and the judge will be like, "Is this really what you want done?" Maybe there's one question where the judge is like, "Well, I really see it this way, and that's my ruling."
Hmm.
The people that end up in family court, the majority of our clients are ending up with somebody who's got some mental illness issues. And so if you don't have experience as a lawyer in how to negotiate that and what you're dealing with, it's going to be just that much crazier because now you've got somebody who's crazy on the other side and you've got a lawyer that doesn't know what they're dealing with. So they can't counsel you that at this point, you can either spend $250,000 and you're still going to lose, or here's the best deal we can structure. Let's move forward. And I think that that's a big factor is that lawyers really have to recognize in family law how much psychology is involved.
Yeah,
And the litigants have to recognize how much psychology is involved because it impacts the negotiations hugely. And I had this case. I've got this guy who he's a really smart guy and he's got a lot of money. And the problem is that we're dealing with somebody on the other side who is very emotional. And so we were trying to get to a 50-50 custody timeshare. And anytime I mentioned 50-50, it was like immediately the hackles went up on her side. There was no, absolutely not going to happen. I said, all right, well, we need to like approach this from a different perspective. And what we came up with was nibbling away at it. And it would be, well, can we get this day? And can we get that day? And can we get this? Well, how about this little bit extra? And over the course of like 2 months of negotiations, we got him all the way up to, I think it was like 48% finally. And, and the other like 2% basically is a 12-hour on a Thursday thing. And I'm like, dude,
yeah,
like,
really. At that point, yeah,
be done. Like,
yeah,
come on.
yeah,
But I've also had the client who was like going to fight for that 2%.
yeah.
I've had that one.
I've seen it trying to help guys, and I one of the things I always say to them is 2%. Think about it. Is it really worth it? Because here's the other side of it is there's going to be times you're going to get 2% the other way. It doesn't matter what the agreement says, right?
Right.
She's going to go on vacation. She's going to say to you, "Hey, can you watch the kids for a week?"
Yeah.
Don't. I see so many guys get into I've got to have exactly 50-50. And it's
I
funny.
have that client and I hated him.
Yeah, it's tough because one of the things that I did in the early 2000s when I lived in New York and was involved with all this heavily is we tried to get a shared parenting bill through in New York.
Yeah.
And I actually helped draft it, right? We got in there, and of course the guys didn't like it because the verbiage we put in was starting point is 50-50 basically, right?
Right.
And that's what it needs to be legally, because
Yes.
no judge is going to accept absolute hardcore 50-50, because they got that best interest of the children. We'll talk
Right.
about that phrase in a little bit. So, if you tied a judge's hands, it was never going to get through the legislature.
Right.
Guys had a hard time understanding that. Well, what if she gets 51 and I get 49? So what? I mean, guys, you're getting 49, right? A lot of guys are getting every other Wednesday night for dinner and every other weekend. That was the standard order back then.
Right.
And I'm sure it probably is similar these days.
Standard dad package
Yep.
every other weekend, then Wednesday night pizza dinner,
Yeah,
man.
there you go.
I've said that phrase, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of times.
So when you can get more than that and be realistic about life, there's going to be times where, your job may say, hey, I'm sending you to a conference, or you need to go here, or you want to take a vacation.
Right.
Battling over 1 or 2% or even 5% causes so much animosity down the road, where come together. I actually went through a second divorce. I don't like telling my whole history, but that one we spent less than $1,000 on. Never set foot in court. Neither one of us ever set foot in court. We wrote it all up. The two of us we get along better now than when we were married.
Yeah.
And it was
I've seen that happen.
So I've seen both sides of it. I've seen the extremely bad and the extremely good, for lack of a better term. And as much as you can as a guy, make it to the good, go there, because the mental anguish, it drains you, as I'm sure you can speak about more than I can, but I've been there. The financial cost, my retirement will not be what it is, because I had to spend a lot of money paying an attorney. I don't regret it. Don't get me wrong, because in the end, it was the right thing to do for my children, right?
Yeah.
But I'm going to pay the price the rest of my life for that. And a lot of guys, to kind of put a bow on this, they don't really realize what they're getting into. And finding a good attorney is key. What do you think about? Now, here's what I did. I went attorney shopping. So it's that old trick. You go find all the attorneys and you go meet with them all, and then your ex can't use them. So I found the top 8 attorneys in my area. I already knew who I was hiring, because she was number one. Karen was number one. Everybody knew about her. But I went to the other 7. Now, Karen did not tell me to do that. But I remember in her office later, she's like, dude, nice job. Do you?
It is, and I'll tell you why I like that. And here's the difference between men and women. And here's I don't know how you came up with that idea. Who told
Somebody
you to
told
that?
me to do it. Somebody told me to do it.
Good. Whoever that is, you should go send them a big bouquet of flowers and a bottle of wine.
I took them out to dinner.
Hopefully, it wasn't the second wife. Maybe
No.
Now that would have been a funny
That would
story.
have been great. Yeah.
But I always say, and people have pretty much told me that I'm crazy, but I'm like, I heard that a lot. Women plan their divorces.
Absolutely, they do.
Women spend 2 to 3 years planning their divorce, and the men are just strung along. And how crude can I be?
I don't care how crude you get, so go for it.
Okay. So about every 3 months, the guys are getting some sex, and they think oh, everything's okay. This is just marriage. And they're not realizing that what's actually happening is it's diversion sex. It's designed specifically to keep them in that state of mind of I'm still married, things are okay.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not actually paying attention to the fact that sex actually lasted about 30 seconds.
Okay.
And happened at a very convenient time. And there was no real communication before or after. It was a complete just diversion. Go over here. Do not look behind the green curtain that I'm paying off all of my credit card debt.
Yep.
Do not look at the fact that, I have been stockpiling money, and you're never going to find it because it's buried in some shoebox that you're not going to look in. Or, and this is a good trick that women like to use, they're paying their girlfriend, and that is cash. It's actually being stockpiled in somebody else's bank account specifically for them. That's a trick women do.
It's one
And it's
that I've
freaking
seen,
hard to find.
Yeah, I've seen that tactic in fact, I think there's been studies done on it that shows sometimes like out to 2 to 3 years they'll even plan out in
Yeah.
some instances, and that
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And
and
and during that time, they've met with two, three, four, maybe eight lawyers,
yep,
and they've just made sure that like none of those are going to be available to you.
and there's nothing that that attorney can do once you've met with them. They're out. That's I think guys need to understand that.
Yeah.
Once you meet with them, they're done. You either hire them or they're not going to be part of the case because they can't go to
And
the other
that's one
side.
of the reasons why we do paid consults,
Hmm.
because my meeting with you is now actually going to, for most lawyers, not for me specifically, but for most lawyers, if I'm meeting with you, I'm now also cutting myself out of being able to represent your wife
Right, right.
or girlfriend.
Or
I don't have that issue so much because I'm men's family law. I've been representing primarily men for 20 years now. You know, I occasionally represent women, and usually when I do, they're coming to me as a referral. And
okay,
usually it's because they're the ones who are taking the traditionally masculine role,
okay.
which is fine.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with
But
that.
they're coming to me and they're like, I need you because I'm going to get screwed here. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, it's interesting how that whole dynamic ends up with trying to find that attorney, and when you find a good one, as I lucked out and did, it does make all the difference in the world. Conversing with my ex, the guy was a bottom feeder. He was out to make money. I mean, I
Yeah.
actually felt bad for her at times because she was very emotional and she would get fired up about something. Oh, we'll file a court case, no problem. I'll file a
Yeah.
motion. Well, yeah, you're paying for that, and some of
The
them were so
easiest thing in the
stupid.
world for a divorce lawyer to do is to play on your emotions.
Very much
I can
so.
play on
Yeah.
your emotions. I
Yes.
know exactly what your hot buttons are.
Yep.
I know how to, I have done, I've asked the questions to figure out how much money is available, what your hot buttons really are. And if I want to play mean and dirty and just milk money out of you, I can completely play on your emotions and get you to the point where you're like, take my pension. Just
Yeah.
I have to win. I'm not letting her. And it's like, okay. And
Yeah.
I see it all the time.
Yeah.
I see it frequently. I see it frequently with women. If I really wanted to make a shit ton of money, I would have switched teams and I would have gone represent women.
Do you?
Because here's the thing: when you're representing a woman,
Yep.
you bill 2 to 3 times, maybe 4 times as much as you bill men.
Really?
Yeah, oh yeah, absolutely.
Because of the emotional side, they calling for support and all that. That would be my
There's
thought.
there, there's two reasons.
Okay.
One, it's really easy because they're never paying attention to the bills
Okay.
because it's an emotional thing for them. I'm their therapist. I'm their best friend. I'm their vent. Like it's easy to just have them talk all day long,
Yep.
and they're not paying the bill.
Or they think they're not paying the bill.
They're generally not paying the bill.
Really?
It's why I represent men, because most women are like, well, he has to pay for the divorce. He has to pay my legal bills. I
Okay.
don't make any money. He has to pay me alimony. He has to pay me support. He has to pay me child support. And he has to pay for my lawyer. And that's frequently true. There is a contribution that comes from the higher earner, which is frequently the man,
Hmm.
to the lower earner. And as a consequence of that, if I know I'm going to have Dan paying, let's say, 40% of my bill, judge is going to, at the end of the day, look at it and be like, all right, he's got to contribute something. What here, Cal, just give him 40%. Like I'm gonna authorize that.
Hmm.
What am I gonna do, Dan? Think about this from a business perspective.
Up the bill and get them for as much as you can.
Two, three,
Uh,
4 times.
yeah. Every motion you
I'll
could
write
think
all
of.
that off. It didn't
Yeah.
matter. I
Yeah.
got what I originally wanted
Yeah.
anyways.
Exactly.
And if you're
Exactly.
representing women, that's a snap, dude. That's so easy to do.
Well, I think that was what was going on with my ex. Now, I'll tell you,
No, no,
in
no.
our case,
Guaranteed.
guaranteed, yeah.
Guaranteed.
But thing was, it was never going to be an issue of me having to pay her court fees. She did try it, and the judge basically laughed at her. He's like,
Yeah.
"No, that's not," and it went away after that.
Good.
That's why I was like surprised and maybe I don't know, because you're on the West Coast. Maybe it's different on the East Coast. Most of my experience, and I've actually gone into family court with guys at times. There wasn't a lot of him being ordered to pay her fees. It was you each pay your own and be done with it. But you would know far more than I would on that. So I defer to your fine judgment on that, my friend.
It depends on the case.
Yeah, it really does. So let's talk a little bit about some of the other issues that guys deal with family court. So let's be honest. Every guy out there at this point believes family court is against him. That the judges are all crooked. The attorneys are all crooked. No offense intended.
Oh yeah, guaranteed. Guaranteed.
that all that stuff. Now, look, here's my opinion first. Take from it what you will. I think there's some truth to that, but in my experience, it's not to the level that most people think it is. Where do you think it falls?
So I think we have to look at it from top down. Let's take a look at what does the law actually say.
Mm-hmm.
So the law is generally gender neutral.
Generally
gender neutral.
Yep.
When it comes to custody visitation, division of assets, we're like, okay, we're just going to split it. So then the question becomes, how's the judge applying that law? What's the judge's internal bias? And they're all going to have an internal bias because we all have internal biases. That's just
we're human beings.
Just is.
It's the nature of the beast.
Some of them do a better job than others of hiding it and overcoming it by recognizing it and then saying like, no, I'm not going to do that. Judge Judy, great job of overcoming a lot of her biases.
I actually met her.
Yeah? I'd love to meet her.
She actually supported us on the shared parenting bill. And
makes total sense.
Came to Albany, and so it went into committee. For those of you that don't know anything about how a bill is passed, it varies depending on the state, but essentially in New York, you get it submitted, they get co-sponsors, it goes to whatever committees are involved. And so that's where the battle is. And in our case, had it come out of committee, we were guaranteed passage. There's 150 odd legislators in New York. We had 120 co-sponsors. They ain't co-sponsoring if they're not going to sign. Both parties, by the way, right? Oh, you know what? You know how we got a lot of them? This is prior to smartphones, email, and all that. We had people faxing. The bill was A30, 330 was the bill. We flooded their fax machines to the point they begged us to stop. But anyway, long story short, we knew if it got out of committee, it was going to pass. So did NOW, the National Organization of Women, and all the women's groups that were fighting it. So there was this big...
And that right there is a huge factor.
It is a monster.
National Organization of Women, we want equality.
Yep.
But we're going to fight a 50-50 bill.
And they fought. And they were lying through their teeth. And then in come Judy Shineline, I think is her last name.
Yeah.
I will never, ever forget that. I wish it had been recorded.
Yeah.
It was the most eloquent speech in favor of I won't even say fathers, but children.
Right.
It's like the children are the ones suffering by you not allowing the fathers to be participant. I mean, I'm paraphrasing the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, I had tears in my eyes. Honest to God, I had tears in my eyes. And I'm like, why isn't she a family court judge? Oh, wait, she was. She was.
And she's got a TV show.
And she's got a TV show. So, not to sidetrack, but just a quick, fun little side note on that. But
sure. So now we've got judges' bias that we have to overcome.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they try, for the most part, to overcome it. The problem is, just like when the National Organization for Women came in and tried to, and evidently did, sandbag that bill,
mm-hmm.
Judges are trained by domestic violence shelters.
Bingo.
And do you know how many domestic violence shelters there are for men in America?
2.
And where are those 2?
Arkansas and Texas.
Have you been to the one in Arkansas?
I have not been there. I have talked. Well, this was years ago. I talked to the director at one point because I was trying to get a shelter open in New York.
Yeah, you talked to Patty?
I did, way back. This is years ago.
I interviewed her. I flew to that shelter because I was doing a documentary on men who are victims of domestic violence.
Wow.
I flew to Batesville, Arkansas, Went to Taylor House. I've still got the video of her and
Wow.
interviewing the guys. Then I flew to Dallas, Texas. I cannot. I think it was another Patty or
Yeah,
Patricia,
I don't know
also
any of the Texas people.
because they were opening up a men's shelter there.
Uh-huh.
So yes, you are correct. There are
There
two
are
in the
two.
entire country.
Yep. And I will
And
tell you.
that is another factor because, and to get back on track,
Mhm.
those domestic violence shelters and the female domestic violence victims lobby train judges.
Yes, they
And
do.
so what they're training judges on is how men are perpetrators, women are all victims, and that's impacting whatever cognitive bias they have that they're automatically trying to overcome on the one hand, and now we're reinforcing on the other. So as a consequence, now you as a dad coming in going like, I'm a great dad, the judge is like, okay, but I've just been told that like men are abusers, men are coercive control, don't believe everything a man says, reframe whatever you're hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's another battle that we have to overcome.
Yeah, it's called the Duluth model. That's what the judges were trained under.
Fucking horrible
Oh
thing.
my God.
The fucking wheel of power is just
I've
like,
been
oh, what a
battling
bunch of
that thing
crap.
since it came out in the, I think it was the 90s. And
And you know what's interesting is if you use that power wheel and you actually apply it and flip it to women,
they don't like that.
oh, oh. But when you actually walk through it with a man and say, like, did this happen? 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 They're like, yes, yes,
Yep.
yes, yes.
Yep.
And I'm like, and why didn't you do anything? And here's the phrase that men use that cuts their nuts off. And then they're like, the system's not fair. So why didn't you go and get a domestic violence restraining order against her if all this is going on?
Yeah.
Can't do that. She's the mother of my kids.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay. No, hey, dude, I get it. I understand. You've been trained since the time you were 0 to go be that Prince Charming on a white knight and give your princess everything and lay down your life and sacrifice everything for your girl and your kids. And the reality is that's exactly what you're doing.
Yep.
You're going to sacrifice your life for your wife and your kids and your girlfriend and your kids. And then you're going to turn around and try and complain about it.
And I was that guy, so I can verify everything you're saying, right? I was a victim of domestic violence. I was asked, why didn't you try and get help? Why didn't you? Now, part of it, I think, in my case, and having talked with guys, is the stigma, obviously, right?
Mm-hmm.
If I have to admit that, I'm 6'1" at the time, 250, and football player and all that, and she was, 5'6", and I should be able to squash her like a bug. Not that I ever raised a hand to her. How am I going to go in front of some judge and say, yeah, she's beating me up? Oh no, I can't. My manhood will be at stake. No, guys, you need to speak up because using that, like you said, that power and control wheel. I had a questionnaire I used to give guys. Answer these 10 questions, and inevitably they would hit at least 5 of the 10 would be a yes. And then I would go, you're a domestic violence victim. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, because they don't understand it. And then, kind of tied in with the judges, I had a family court judge say to me, God, 20 years ago, he goes, we were talking about temporary restraining orders and temporary orders of domestic violence, to get them out of the house.
Oh, yeah.
The magic bullet, as they call it, right? And he goes, Silver bullet. I said to him, most guys don't understand that that's going to be automatically granted. And he was very, very good about how he was explaining. He goes, you need to look at it from our perspective. The last thing in the world we want is to have some guy, we say, no, we're not going to issue the order, kill his wife, and then it gets on the news, and then we look bad because we let this guy go. So we're going to always err on the side of caution, and he can always try and get it reversed later. That was pretty much how
that's their bullshit, which is total bullshit.
I'm like, dude, come on,
Yeah, exactly. I see that same thing. And when I do my presentation on domestic violence and the history of domestic violence in our country, we started off, 25, 30 years ago with basically, unless there was actual physical damage, didn't really count. Like nobody cared. Like this is a family matter. And the turning point in the war on domestic violence was O.J. Simpson.
Yes, you're
When
right. Yeah.
O.J. Simpson killed Nicole Brown Smith,
Hmm.
Nicole Brown Simpson, um, that was the turning point of the domestic violence lobby and how they went after judges to change laws, and they went after legislators to change the legislation. That was the moment when all of a sudden men suddenly became the huge perpetrators of everything, and we lost. And this is
Yeah.
just an echo effect. It's expanded from that to, okay, with physical violence. Then it was like, okay, now there's actual like property damage. Then there was like financial damage, and then there was emotional coercive control. Is where we're at today.
Yep.
We have this standard of disturbing the peace of the other occupant of the house. Literally, if I'm living with somebody, I can go in and get a restraining order against them because they are disturbing my peaceful enjoyment of the home. What the does that mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Like, I don't know. And what do people who have ever lived in any living environment for more than a week and not gotten on each other's nerves?
Always going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a stupid, like you can fly a 787 through that thing definition
Yep.
on the one hand.
Yep.
Yeah. And so that's one of the big factors is the way the judges' internal biases are now being swayed back towards protection. Because, and I get it, no judge wants to be the one that lets OJ out to go do it again. I mean, that's just rational.
And I
But it's
think any
also,
reasonable person would understand that. Problem is, you tend to lose reason when you're going through a divorce.
my problem is this. Those temporary orders are granted too easily.
Very easily. They're
granted in chambers without the other side having an opportunity to say anything, with no judicial review beyond how fast can I read this? Are the magic words in there? Because if the magic words are in there, it's getting issued, guaranteed. I can get one against you. Like, I put the magic words in there, dude, I'm getting a restraining order.
I'm afraid of him. Those are the magic words I know. 4 words. I'm afraid of him. That's all it takes.
And if you add in, oh, he grabbed me and started to choke me.
Right.
You put that word choke in there.
Done.
Boom, done. They don't even read. They will not read any further. They don't need to.
Yep.
And the reason why is because the domestic violence lobby said, oh, choking is an indicator of increasing lethality. And as a consequence of that, we should be issuing these restraining orders faster and sooner. Mm-hmm. So anybody who knows what they're doing just puts the magic words in there and it's like game over. Because I've now kicked you out of your house, taken your car, taken your tools, taken all your clothes, taken your kids. I'm probably going to actually win on the actual restraining order in 3 weeks because standards are so freaking low. It's pretty easy.
Right.
And once I've done that, now you're an abuser. You're a perpetrator. You're no longer presumed to be a good parent. You're actually presumed to be a bad parent. It's presumed that it's not in the kid's best interest to be with you. So now the judge has to apply that standard. And as a consequence, you've been cut off at the knees and you weren't even there.
And you probably didn't even have an attorney even aware of it at that point because it happens like right off the bat.
Absolutely. It happens all the time off the bat now. It's automatic. It's like we have gone from, so when I started 24 years ago, Santa Monica is a fairly small town. Mm-hmm. So there were like 5 divorce lawyers that like everybody knew. So like I called one up and I'm like, hey, Connolly, I'm a new divorce lawyer in town. I understand we've got this case together. How do you want to handle this? And it was literally handled with grace, dignity, and an understanding that this family is going through a change. We needed to deal with the kids. We needed to deal with money. And there was a fair amount of civility and respect going both ways. Mm-hmm. These days, generally it starts with a stack of papers that includes a restraining order about why your abuser, probably if it's a really young kid, you're probably also a child molester, kicking you out of the house, taking control of all the assets. Here's a divorce paperwork. Here's my demand for attorney's fees. Here's my demand for spousal support. Here's my demand for child support. Here's my demand for a child custody evaluation because, I just want to get somebody in there just in case. There's no civility. We're at
No.
global thermonuclear war from the
Right
get-go.
off the bat. Yep.
And everybody's blaming like lawyers like me who are like, we can be reasonable about this. It's just a family reorganization. But no, you lawyers are always doing this stuff. I'm like, no, there's a few lawyers that do that because it's very strategic. And by the way, who's actually making those decisions to do that stuff?
Well,
Oh, yeah,
the
it's
plaintiff
the
or
client
yeah,
that runs the
yeah,
case.
right.
Well, who's the client over there?
Your
Is
love.
that the lawyer or is it the
It's the love.
client
What you
who's the
thought was the love of
mom
your life. Yeah.
who you're still in love with and you're still trying to make it all right? Because if I'm just reasonable, she'll be reasonable.
Oh, I said those very words. And
I
I,
know
I learned the hard way. Um,
most guys do.
and and that's the thing that if we get nothing out of this, guys, if you're listening to this, take that to heart, right? Everything that David is saying is critical because you have no idea what's going to happen. Once a TRO is issued, you're basically done. Have you
Yeah.
what percentage? I know it's tough to put a number on. What percentage ever actually get reversed? I don't think it's very high, is it?
Um, so let me go through the process. You file for the temporary restraining order that says, I'm in danger, I'm in fear,
Mm-hmm.
I need immediate protection right now. That gets issued. Literally, I file it in the morning. The judge reviews it in his chambers. Early afternoon, I'll get it back from the court granted with a hearing date that's 21 days to 25 days later for the actual hearing. And during that 3-week period, the person who's being restrained has the opportunity to file a response, do some discovery, prepare their case. And generally, what that means is we're going to get a continuance in order to really prepare that case,
Mm-hmm.
is the truth of the matter. So we're really not looking at 3 weeks. We're really looking more like, I don't know, 6, 8, 12, 20 weeks, depending on the courtroom and how busy they are and how much work I need to do to protect my client's interests, how much discovery we need to do. So it's a variable number there. But during that time, you're probably not seeing your kids. So you're going through an emotional process,
Yep.
which is why I'm like, you need to be in therapy right now. And they fight me on that all the time.
Yeah, I mean,
When
I always put it
you
as
go
the
through that process
yep.
and you get to the actual hearing, we do our hearing, and then if I'm successful, the restraining order gets denied because the judge sees it was really just a strategy and a tactic that's incident to a divorce or a custody battle, and then we're just going to deal with the kids. If they're issued, that then becomes a restraining order from anywhere from 6 months to 5 years in California.
Mm-hmm.
And during that time, if there's any violation, you can go to jail. During that time, at the very last 6 months of it, the other side can go into court and say, well, I want to renew this restraining order just because I'm still afraid of them. And that afraid might just be because I still want to have control over them.
Exactly.
And at that point, a judge has the opportunity to make that a then actual permanent lifetime restraining order, which is a huge thing for some people because it takes away your right to own a gun, which can impact your job.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to show up on background checks. And it's one of those where once that's issued, and if you want to file an appeal and try and get that overturned at the next level up, the appellate level, good fucking luck. Like not gonna happen.
I did some research. God, now this is, mind you, 20 years ago. We were looking at how many appeals out of family court that went to the appellate court actually, one, got heard, and
Right. That's a
two,
big number.
actually got overturned, and it was like two in a 3 year
Yeah.
period. It's
Yeah.
just,
It's
you're wasting your time, basically.
a lot of times you are wasting your time.
There are times it's legit to try. Absolutely. I don't want to ever say no.
I've been working on an appeal
Yeah.
and right now for on a domestic violence denial.
Mm-hmm.
Dad had gone in and asked for a restraining order, and the court, after hearing, um, denied it. And I find it just appalling because it literally mom had violated the restraining order multiple times that were documented.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where the judge was just like, I'm like, you're insane, dude. On the one hand, the judge was congratulating dad for maintaining his composure when mom literally ripped the child out of his arms. Dad didn't pursue it, didn't like get mad, let the child go, didn't traumatize the kid. Judge congratulates him. Good job. And in court, when he's composed, the judge says, well, I don't think he was really all that traumatized because he's composed.
So
you cannot win.
You can't. I was to say it worked against him in the end anyway. He did everything right.
He did everything right, and the judge ruled against him. And it could be perhaps because we had a man of African American heritage. Maybe. I don't know.
It's. I'm just shaking my head.
I won't rule that one out.
You can't rule anything out at this point, right?
You can't. I mean, and in the world of domestic violence, men have a very hard time with it, and you do have to be very aggressive and strategic about how you defend these cases, because, like you as a 6'1" man, on the one hand, never hit a woman. You're too powerful, and you never, ever hit a woman. What kind of a worthless person would ever hit a woman? Why couldn't you defend yourself against this little frail flower of a woman?
With a golf club.
Like, what kind of a man, weak pussy faggot are you?
Yeah.
You can't defend yourself.
Yeah. Why didn't you take? Because she used to hit me with a golf club. Why didn't you take that away? I got laid out one time. Cops showed up, and they were going to arrest me. Mind you, I got knocked out. They were going to arrest me. We lived in a duplex. Thank God the neighbors next door heard everything.
Yeah.
And came over and said, no. It was her. Now, they didn't do it. They told me to leave, of course.
Yeah.
You know how that is. But
right.
I want to put a bow on this because I want to move on to another topic.
Okay.
One that's near and dear to your heart, which is the contempt. But before we go there, what piece of advice would you give to a dad who got served, right? Because they're going to serve you these papers. And you don't have a lawyer. You get blindsided because that's usually how it happens. What's the first thing they should do? And I'm bet it's going to be call an attorney. I know, but what should they do?
The very first thing is they need to pay attention to, are there any restraining orders that are included in that, and then abide by them strictly. And the second thing is figure out what are their dates that they have to respond by.
Okay.
Because that sometimes will be a big factor. It's not uncommon for litigants to maybe serve the very, very, very last minute, maybe even too late for you to properly respond. So you need to know what are your deadlines.
Okay.
That's a big factor.
Okay.
And then go find a lawyer to actually explain what's going on. Even if you don't hire them, at least learn what the hell it is you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah, find an attorney fast is usually my response to guys who have asked me about it. I'm like, I can't help you with this. No, go find an attorney and fast. Let's shift gears if that's okay, because this is something this is actually what triggered me to reach out to you, because I know you started doing the videos on TikTok on it.
Yeah.
It's near and dear to my heart because, as I said, I spent 10 years doing this almost every single month, 17 total. The old contempt of court. So you go through the whole process. You get your divorce. You get your, all of it's laid out. That's just the beginning, my friends. You have no idea what's coming. You think it's over. It's not.
Yep.
As we talked about off air before we got together, I got so good at filling out my own paperwork. I used to fill it out for my attorney and have her review it. But can you talk a little bit about, first of all, what is contempt? Because I don't think a lot of guys really understand. They have this knowledge of, well, it means she didn't do something. But What is it like from a legal sense? A little more depth to it, if you would.
So sure. So there's two types of contempt. There's direct contempt that a judge is experiencing in the courtroom, because the judge is supposed to maintain the decorum and order in their courtroom. And this is where you've got one litigant who starts ignoring the judge, or they ignore the other side, and they're trying to talk over the other side, and they're disrespectful, and they're like, you're out of order, you're out of order. Like, okay, that is a person who is in direct contempt of court. And a judge can, at that point, either kick them out of the courtroom and proceed without them, or in theory, even put them in jail. Then there's indirect contempt. And that is where there's a written court order that somebody is not following. And so that's a clear order that says Dan is supposed to have little Mikey on the first, third, and fifth Fridays of the month, starting at 3 p.m. and have custody all the way through to Monday morning at 9 a.m. or start of school. And mom doesn't allow little Mikey to go to Dan.
Mm-hmm.
This is where it gets murky. Why did mom not allow that? Is mom doing it because Mikey was sick?
Oh, I love that one.
Now we've got an issue of, well, how sick was he? Was he like in the hospital sick? Because if so, mom's got a really good reason. Like, that makes sense to me. Okay, Mikey is sick. There's a reason why he's not going to dad's house that weekend. Did Mikey have a tummy ache because he doesn't want to go to dad because mom has told him that he doesn't really like dad? Because dad's new girlfriend is evil and is mean to him? Now we've got to, okay.
Yeah.
Did mom violate the court order? Did she have the capability to comply with the court order? Does she know about it? Does she have any defenses?
Mm-hmm.
There's no real defense to, well, Mikey had a tummy ache and didn't want to go. And that's the one that we see a lot of. It's this manipulation. It's the psychological games playing. And that's where contempts get really difficult and tricky. And that's why dads get so frustrated and they're like, contempt is a toothless, blunt tool. And I'm like, 100%, dude, you are 100% right there. I'm not going to try and tell you anything else.
Yeah.
You have got it. Because the flip side is, if I was in contempt, they'd fucking make me go to jail. And I'm like, absolutely. And you know why? You know why? Because you were supposed to pay $100 on the first of the month. You had $5,000 in your bank account. And you didn't write the check.
Yep.
You violated the court order. Really easy, really specific. No gray area there.
Pretty much cut and dried. Right. That's what I was just going to say. Yeah.
100%.
Yep.
And that's the difference. And it really is. It's funny to me how often the dynamics of difference between men and women play out across the board. Like, that's it in a nutshell. Like, men are dealing with specific issues. You owe $100 on the first of the month. Pay it. Be done. Mom's got this nurturing, loving, like, I want to take care of the kid, and it's the kid's best interest. And it's like, the judge, like, and you can see, like, as a judge, like, which of those would you want to deal with?
Oh, I remember going in and that exact scenario, and he would just do, this with his forehead. He would just like, oh, not again, because I tried not to file too much because that can backfire on you too. She liked to file a lot. And by the way, in all those years, I never once missed a child support payment. In fact, I would tell my employer, take it out and send it to New York State. I never had to worry about it. And guys, you need to do that. I know it sucks. I know you don't want to pay it. I know all the fights you're going to give me and all the arguments. Suck it up. Do it. Deal with it elsewhere.
I don't want a wage garnishment. I can pay my own bills. No. I'm like, get the wage garnishment.
Do the garnishment because it protects
someone else is responsible for it.
Exactly.
You don't have to think about it anymore. Yep. You're just living on whatever you get. Makes life easier.
And when the state screws up, and they will,
guaranteed.
You're covered because you can show, hey, it's out of my pay stub. I can't control what the state sends her the money or not.
Right.
Because they're usually...
And when she's calling you on the second going, you're late, where's my child support? You get to go...
call New York State Child Support.
Talk to the state.
Nothing I can do.
You want it to go through the government.
I know it sucks. I mean, we could do a whole show just on child support. Maybe we should down the road. But
we could. I got a few stories.
Just pay it, guys. All right. I know. I get it. All right. Just pay it. But going back to the contempt, in my case, I picked and chose my battles. I was looking for, like you said, that one where I could definitively prove it. Now, her big one was holidays. She thought she should have every holiday, and I would get denied almost every single holiday. And of course, you'd file, and we'd go into court, and the judge would go, "Yep, why'd you do that?" That was his. Why didn't you give them the kids this time? I can hear his voice. He's like disgusted at this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
And he would go. So there was one time, Thanksgiving and Christmas, I was supposed to have him. She denied him. We get into court. This is when the Super Bowl was in late January. He goes, well, I'm going to give you Super Bowl Sunday. Dude, that doesn't make up for Thanksgiving and Christmas. Now, I didn't say anything in the courtroom. I was like, but you can't. Nope, you got to be. I always call myself the Terminator in court in that I had no emotions.
Right.
I got Super Bowl Sunday. It's not the same. But I think one of the frustrations that guys have is even when they have airtight case, I don't know what term to use, nothing's really going to be done. She had so many violations. The worst he ever did was don't do that again. Or give me an extra day, like I said, on the Super Bowl.
Right.
And my contention, and I specifically asked for this one time in court, is I'm like, look, you're telling us she's in violation, Your Honor. And I'm paraphrasing what I said, but basically it was, how about this? I have the kids from Friday at 6 until Sunday at 6. How about she spend a couple of weekends in jail? The kids won't even know about it. And he looked at me, and I know he thought about it because he paused, but he didn't do it. And I that kind of said to me, they're never going to put her in jail. Do you see that? I mean, guys go to jail for not paying child support all the time. We all know that. But I don't know of I know of one case where a mother got jailed for contempt. What do you see on that?
Generally, they're not going to.
They're not going
to. And there's a couple reasons. And there's a couple reasons for that. What judge wants to be the one that puts the parent in jail?
Bingo.
Right? I mean, we're back to that.
Yep.
Because what judge wants the kid to know that the other parent put their mom in jail?
Yep.
Right? So we've got that factor on top of all the other mushy factor. And then we've got the other thing that's a big issue here is how many times did you go back to do the contempt?
In my case?
Yeah.
How many times? Dozens.
Really?
Oh, there were. I mean, it was
like you actually went through the process, filed,
yeah.
Had the arraignment, did the trial.
I probably easily 10 to 15 times I filed on contempt of various things. Not one incident. Is that what you're asking? One incident or multiple? That's actually how I ended up.
No, I'm asking multiple times over a period.
Over 10 years, easily 10, 15, probably more than that. Because I would, like I said, I picked my battles. Like sometimes she would say, I'll drop them off to you, and instead of getting them at 6, I'd get them at 9. I'm not filing on that.
Yeah, it's
a waste of my time. Even one time she brought them the following Saturday morning. I was like, I thought about it. I'm not going to lie, but I'm like, no, it's not going to go anywhere. But like the holiday ones, right. And there were other issues. Like we had, she was mandated to inform me of anything going on at school.
Right.
Would never do that. I did file on that at one point, and the judge's response was, "Why don't you talk to the school?" And I went, "I already did, Your Honor," and did all that. But the problem was she told the school not to tell me anything.
Right.
So that all shook out. But it was, like I said, in my case filing, I'll use 12 as a number.
Okay. So then, did you eventually end up with custody?
I did. The judge finally
and
had
this
enough.
is and this is where I'm going with it is, you're probably not going to win your first, second, third, fourth, fifth, maybe 12th, 15th time. Maybe you are going to win, and the judge is going to do nothing. But when you go in and then you're like asking the court to change custody because mom is not abiding by court orders, mom is not supporting the relationship between children and parent. Now that's going to should factor in, because you should be able to argue to the judge, Your Honor, she's been guilty of contempt 12 times in the last 12 years. Like, this is an issue. We need to now change custody. It becomes a factor in a much bigger, longer term battle in my mind. It's a tool. The individual, like, is the judge going to put her in jail because she stole Thanksgiving from you? No,
No,
not going to happen.
never gonna happen.
Not going to happen.
Never gonna happen.
And from a judge's perspective, again, it's like, okay, why are they not going to do that? Because they can't give you back Thanksgiving. They know they can't give you back that day.
Yeah. And
which is another reason, well, like in my Contempt 101 course, I talk about that. Judges hate this stuff because it's pointing out to them how powerless they are. They can't give you that time back.
That's a really good point you just made right there, right? Is that the judge can only do so much. He's not going to jail her. And guys are like, I want her in jail. It's never, ever, ever going to happen. Yeah, I know there's exceptions out there. I mean, I know, like I said, I know one.
You could probably find 4 cases in 200 years.
Exactly, right? So stop going there. Don't expect that result. But that doesn't mean don't file, because in my case, it took 10 years.
Right.
But it was almost verbatim what you just said, how my attorney handled it. Look, we've been in here every single year. You've got, and she's like rattling off the dates, you know.
Yeah.
And ultimately, the judge saw the light. I think he kind of knew, but for whatever reason, that tripped it, right? That was the tripwire that got us over the hump. And then, you know, it was interesting to see how that all shook out, because he didn't order child support. No. Oh, you're already making enough. You don't need to worry. Oh, yeah, he violated the guidelines on that.
Wow.
Oh, Karen lost her shit. she was pissed. And I finally said, she's like, all right, we're going to file. Blah. I'm like, how much is it going to cost me, Karen? Well, you know, blah, blah, blah. I said, Karen, it would take me a year and a half of child support to cover this. No, I'm not bothering.
Not worth it.
It's not worth it.
And that's one of the reasons also why guys walk away from child support. I mean, I see that all the time.
Yeah.
Guys will take the kids and they'll still pay the child support to keep their kids. And they don't want to like break things up. And I'm like, I get it. I understand.
Oh, yeah.
Like you'll pay to see your kids. And this is always amazing. Again, women just, God made me gay for a reason. Women just sometimes can get out of me.
I wish I was sometimes. I got to be honest with you.
Oh, dude. Like it's got benefits, but man, we got our own issues. But I have guys who are like, I would pay a much bigger number every month if she let me have access to my kids. And I will tell the other side that, and they don't believe me. I'm like, you're an idiot. Like, try it and see what happens.
Yeah, why wouldn't you? Well, the other side of it, though, is if they do that and then they lose their job, they're really screwed then. So, but it's interesting that you bring all that up, because I've seen the same thing trying to help guys, right?
Yeah.
I don't care what it costs me. I just want to see my kids. And I get it, right? We all get it.
Men also don't tend to care about money the same way women do.
No, they don't.
Yeah, because the reality is a guy's fallback plan for retirement is a tent and go living in the forest, which frankly sounds like a great deal of fun.
Actually, that would be cool.
Right, okay, so
or in my case, the beach, because it's about 5 miles from where I live. I live on the beach. I'm good with that.
It's 2 miles that way. Like I got a whole bunch of guys down there who are doing that. It's like, you know, but women tend to look at things from a very security perspective. It's why they always want the house. And it's why guys always take the boat, which is a stupid fucking thing to do, because the house appreciates and boats depreciate. And it's a hole in the water into which you throw money. Bad idea. Don't ever take the boat. But women want security, and that's why they're willing to, in my mind, do anything they can to get as much child support out of the man for as long as they can, because that's going to be their only source of income during those years, frequently.
With regards to child support, I didn't intend to go too much into it, but maybe we should kind of touch on it. You know, the guidelines are out there, and my contention is always, if you look at the way the state writes the law, the guidelines are matched to whatever federal reimbursement they're going to get. Doesn't matter how often you got the kids. If they're going to get 24% because you got 3 kids, guess what? That's what child support payment's going to be. Have you seen any changes with regard to that? I mean, it was cut and dried back in my day. There was no, here's the guideline. It was applied. We're not varying at all. You know, didn't matter who had Johnny, how long, it was irrelevant.
Right.
You were going to pay, you know, if you had, It was 17% for one, 24 for two, 31 for three, something like that. And then childcare on top of it.
Yeah.
And then, oh, well, Johnny's in Little League. You got to split that. So
Gotta split that. You gotta pay for health insurance. You gotta
everything,
pay for
right?
dental insurance, ON therapy, and yeah.
Has that changed at all? Are you seeing any movement on that? I haven't, but I was just
Not
curious.
really. I mean,
Yeah.
I generally say if you got one kid and you got every other weekend, Wednesday night pizza dinner, out summer, winter, and spring breaks, you're going to be looking at basically figure 20-25% of your gross paycheck is going to be your child support one way or another.
Right.
And just kind of use that as like a rule of thumb estimate, and then you'll probably be safe. But the reality is it's not changing.
I don't see it changing at all. I've had a couple people ask me what I thought would happen, and which is why I wanted to broach it to you because I don't see it changing. It's too much of a cash cow for the states. I mean, they're getting
It's a
millions.
cash cow for the states on the one hand. It in theory reduces welfare costs on the other. In theory,
In theory,
just saying. The cry from the men's rights activists who are like, they should have to have receipts for all of their expenses.
never gonna happen.
Like in what world do you think that like we have a system that is crumbling under the work we do now. So let's go into something that is like unbelievably micromanaging and every grain of sand on the beach description of life, and you think they can handle that? Yeah, that's not going to happen.
It's never gonna happen.
Like we can barely handle what we got now. The court system is overworked, stressed out. The judges are dealing with stuff they don't want to be dealing with because we're dealing with emotionally distraught, crazy people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just the sad reality of a lot of this. And it's coming back to, that contempt issue of why do contempt? Well, because the only way you're going to get some pressure on this is actually coming back and coming back and coming back. But it's a repeated, you've got to be back in front of that judge because they don't want to deal with this stuff. You have to have enough hammers to like really cobble all those hammers together to beat them over the head. Be like, listen, it's 12 years of her violating these orders. Now you got to change something.
Right. Have you in your course, because I've started to look at it, but I haven't really. Have you seen? I don't know how I want to word this. Let me back it up a little bit. When guys are looking at that, have you seen guys kind of wake up a little bit and say, "Okay, now I get it"? Because I think you see it, I'm sure, on TikTok or YouTube or wherever. You see the guys posting videos, and you could hit them upside the head with a frying pan and go, "Dude, this is the way it's going to be." Do you think even with your course can help them to say, "Hey, here's the reality, right? Yeah, the law is the law. It's neutral. Absolutely, it is." But
the reason why there's a shit-eating grin on my face is because as you're talking about that, I have one particular follower who likes to critique all my videos, and it's always pretty much the same thing. Like, you're charging too much. You're pitching. You should be giving all this away for free. Why is the system designed to like destroy men? You should be changing the system. And it's nothing but this constant stream of criticism of me. Well, he's doing absolutely nothing. Like just doing nothing.
right.
So of course I fell into a little bit of a hole and I went and scrolled through a bunch of his stuff. And I looked at it and it's like, oh, well, I see why you did wrong there, and I see what you did wrong there, and I see what you did wrong there. And had he, or if he were to actually, spend the whopping money it is to like get my Contempt 101 course, he would see what he did wrong and then how to structure it going forward, because contempt is a very, very specific procedural thing you have to do. There are steps you have to follow, and if you misstep at all, it's going to get thrown out.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's a criminal action in theory. Because there's the threat that somebody could be put in jail.
Right.
All of those constitutional rights and all of those constitutional procedures apply. Mm-hmm. So when I see guys like railing on, she's in contempt, she's violated the court orders, and the judge needs to just see this, I'm like, if you're walking into court and you're telling the judge, here, Your Honor, she's violated the court order, she's in contempt, the judge is going to look at that and be like,
yep,
go away. And that's exactly what happened to this guy. I'm 99% sure.
Okay.
I don't know for an absolute fact, but 99% I'm willing to bet. He walked into court and was like, "Here, she's violating a court order. She's a contempt." And the judge was like, "Get out of here. I'm not doing that."
Yeah,
Now,
you have to be very
now
careful
here's
with
a
that.
more. This is just for example.
Yep.
Contempts are going to look more like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to be thick. It's going to be thorough. There's going to be lots of evidence. You're going to really explain to the judge, like, here are the 4 things that are needed to know about contempt. Here's why they're important. And here's the proof we've got that's actually admissible evidence, which is a big issue for a lot of people. They forget that one. Like, oh, it's that admissible part. I have clients who confuse exhibits with evidence all the time. I've got this one client who's like, the judge needs to see the evidence. I'm like, you don't have any evidence.
Right.
You've got exhibits. You got to get to a trial and then admit it, and then it becomes evidence, and then the judge can look at it.
Yeah, they don't even look at half that stuff until
they don't because they don't have to because it's objected to as hearsay. People don't know what that is because they don't do the homework. They don't actually lay a foundation. They don't authenticate a document. So if you're not going to go in and actually do your job properly, the judge is going to be like, "Sir, you haven't given me anything." Mm-hmm. And you're over there arguing like, "Well, I showed you. And the judge is like, "I heard you. You're a great dad.
But I'm not doing anything because..."
Where's all the rest?
Yeah.
Like, you got to give me all the rest.
You've got to have your I's dotted, your T's crossed on those things. And as I said earlier, I got pretty good at doing them. And then I would ship them to Karen. She would fix them to make them legal, right? But she
would also polish them.
She did. She would,
and that's key, right? Because remember, the first impression you make on a judge is not when you walk into court.
It's that paperwork.
The first impression you make on a judge is the paperwork.
Yeah.
That's what they're seeing in chambers. They're reading, and they're reading one lawyer's side of this, which is all properly done.
And a 1-page doc from Dad
versus this.
Yep.
And it's like, dude, the judge is an idiot. The judge isn't doing their job. The judge is biased. No, the judge is probably doing their job. The question is, did you do yours?
And that's what guys need to understand. It's not, look, there's a bias. I'll be the first to tell you.
100%. I'm the first one to say that.
Absolutely there is. But the judges also have a job to do. And people get mad at me for saying this, right? They have to follow the law. They have to. They might think you're 100% right. But if you don't have that paperwork filled out right, guess what? Out in the trash it goes. You're done. Doesn't matter how much you proved. It's irrelevant if that paperwork's not right.
Yeah. And you've got several gatekeepers you've got to go through to get there. We have to get papers filed by the court clerk, which these days is getting even more difficult because everything is now going to the computer system. And if you don't have the right codes all the time, then it's going to get rejected, and then your paperwork didn't even get filed.
Right.
So then you've got the actual, like, maybe a judge has a research attorney who's going to take a look at it, and they're going to make a determination as to what should be done. They may make a recommendation if it's a complex issue. And then the judge is going to actually read it. And then you have to actually now go argue it.
And you got to argue
that's
it
why
without being
That's
emotional.
why I'm doing these courses.
Right.
It's called Dad's Law School for a reason. It's not that and this is a funny thing. I thought when I started Dad's Union of Dads, and I would do these like, "Hey, Dad." Mm-hmm. I thought I was David talking to Dad Dan. I was wrong.
Oh, no.
You're looking at it as I'm Dad. And I'm like, wait, I'm a single gay man. I got no kids. What are you talking about?
But
that happened.
In a way,
and then the beard came along and the mustache, and it's like, just going to become Santa
But in
Claus.
a way, it's a compliment to you because one of the things, and I'm not saying this to suck up if anybody's thinking I am, but your videos are really good at explaining things. And
thank you.
And really, I think if guys really just step back from the emotion and listen to what you're saying in your videos, they can really learn a lot from it. Same with this, right? we're given a lot of information. Now, I know damn well there's guys out there going, those two, boom, they're slamming things. Like, you know it, I
Dude,
know it.
I know who's going to be complaining about this.
And it's like, we're trying to help you guys, right? Both of our mission right now is to kind of let you see the reality of things. Yes, I get it. I fought for my kids. Probably, I would argue I fought as hard as anyone ever has. And ultimately, I did win at a tremendous cost. I had hair up until then. I always make that joke because my detractors love to point out that I have no hair. I don't know how that makes me stupid, but apparently it does. But the cost to you mentally, physically, emotionally, financially, you've got to, if nothing else, take the emotion out of the whole process, which is very, very hard to do. Not to tout myself, but I'm very good at it. Like I said, I became the Terminator in a courtroom. Karen used to laugh at me. She's like, nothing phases you. And I'd be seething. I mean, just like ready to just lose it. But I knew if I did, right, my ex would be screaming and the judge was getting pissed at her. But I was sitting there going, well, Your Honor, because he would ask me a question. Right. Well, Your Honor, here's what happened really, blah, 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 blah. For a woman to lose composure in court, it's not the end of the world. A guy loses composure in court, you're done.
I will.
Go. I want to hear it.
For a woman to lose composure in court shows how much she loves her kids.
Yes, I was going to say, yes.
That's a good thing for her.
Yes, it is. You're right. She's fighting for the
minute you raise your voice, sir, you have an aggression problem.
Yep.
You need anger management courses.
It's funny. I knew we were going to go with that. I do instantly because it is. And honestly, I think in my case, and I've actually watched some other cases. I went in with some guys. I don't know if they're still allowing that. I heard through the grapevine that they're stopping, what is it, observers? Is that what they call them?
No. Well, at least not in California. The issue is this. Divorces are public record. Mm-hmm. Paternity cases, which is where people have kids but they're not married. Mm-hmm. Those are in theory still confidential.
Okay.
Like I can go online and I can go look up a divorce case and I can get all the documents, but a paternity case I can't unless I'm actually the attorney of record.
Okay.
It's kind of silly at this point because I think we're really beyond the whole concept of bastard children and illegitimate kids, but there's no real interest in passing a law to make that stuff unconfidential again because there's no money behind it.
Right.
The domestic violence lobby has a lot of money behind it, so they're willing to hire lobbyists to go get laws passed. But who cares if a kid's case is confidential, not confidential? Doesn't really matter, right?
No, it doesn't. It's, it's, I don't know where I was going to go with that.
well, so that's the answer of like why.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're not allowed in the courtroom because if somebody asks, doing a paternity case.
Right.
If I was doing one for a celebrity, and they asked, I would ask the courtroom to be cleared, so that it is kept confidential.
I think when I would go in with a dad, I was this year as I call myself a support animal now. It wasn't what I would call myself back then, but it was basically to just be in the courtroom with them. I mean, I wasn't testifying or anything. I would sit in the gallery. But one of the things I used to advise guys to do is, if you're dealing with it and you haven't been to court yet, go watch, because that is a great way to get educated.
Yeah.
Because like I said way back when we first started, I had no freaking idea whatsoever. And you just go in, sit in the gallery if you can, because like I said, I've heard in some areas they're not allowing it anymore. But anyway, if you can, go do it. Don't say a word. No. And also, the other thing, I don't know if the California has, but New York has hearing examiners. They're the ones that hear the child support cases.
Yeah.
They're not judges. I don't know who the hell holds them accountable because I have yet to figure out who it is. But anyway, they're in for life, by the way.
Yeah.
And they are, you go in and observe that, and it will open your eyes because having done it, I've never seen a dad basically get anything other than what was specifically laid out. You've got to have a really very well buttoned up presentation.
if you're going to get anything different. In my dad's action pack, which is where I'm teaching dads how to like draft their declaration, how to prepare for court, how to actually go in and speak to a judge. One of the things I say is they need to go sit in those courtrooms to understand what their judge is really going to be like. Because just getting that familiarity will reduce their anxiety, which will reduce the adrenaline. So when they're speaking, hopefully they will be calmer. They won't come across as either too frantic, which can read frequently as, okay, super nervous, this guy's sketchy. My protection thing's already going to get triggered. So now I'm going to really lean more towards mom and protecting the kids.
Yep.
So if you can game the system for yourself and just increase your own confidence in the public speaking aspect of it, it's worth it. I totally agree with you that people need to go into courtrooms more and just, if they've got a case in front of a judge, know what you're dealing with.
And even if you don't think you're going to end up in court, go check it out because it will open your eyes. And I think it would go a long way also towards helping people understand actually the system. And not, we all hate divorce attorneys, no offense intended, but you know what I mean, right? You know it.
Dude, I got a long list of divorce attorneys I hate.
All right, if you don't mind, and we kind of talked about this ahead of time, I'd like to kind of shift. So yesterday I put out a video saying, I know what I want to ask, but hey guys, is there any things that you would like me to ask David?
Oh boy.
I didn't give your name though, don't worry. So
okay.
Now with the understanding, I put the caveat in, no specific case stuff. David cannot answer that. One, he's in his own state. He can't answer for other states. And two, he doesn't know all the particulars. So that would not be fair to him. So I said, we got to keep it general. So if you don't mind, I'd like to do, let's call it 20 questions.
All right. Speed round.
Speed round. And yeah, just the quick and dirty on these. All right. So I'm pulling these literally off TikTok and Instagram. So excuse my verbatim language on some of these. But,
oh boy. Okay.
Why is it that a prenuptial can be contested?
Because there's a change in circumstance over the lifetime of the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And if somebody does actually have a huge swing in their life style and they get used to that, it could definitely be a grounds for court to modify a prenuptial agreement.
Do you find that they hold up though? I mean,
yes, they do.
For the most part, they do, right?
So prenuptial agreements, premarital agreements are great if you're coming into the marriage with a house and some assets, and they're coming in with a house and some assets, because we can identify what those are and keep them separate upon a divorce. All the stuff in the middle will probably end up becoming just this mess.
Yeah, you guys would call it community property,
and the mistake that many men make, is they get the prenuptial, they try and keep everything separate, and then they just start blending it all together. And it's like, dude, what are you just?
This one's a good one. We kind of touched on it already, though. Do dads usually end up paying the greater share of court costs, and is it based on the incomes of each party?
Yeah, it is, and they're generally going to pay.
Yes and yes. Yes. I knew the answer to that one, and I'm not a lawyer. Good question. What percentage of dads actually get custody? And I'm going to say primary custody is probably what they mean.
I don't have any hard numbers on that. It's growing and it's changing every year. It's increasing. Mm-hmm. And we're going to see a big change, I think, over the next 10, 15 years, because the generations behind me are like, I want to be a dad. Mm-hmm. They're willing to fight for it. Mm-hmm. So I think that we're going to see some changes. But maybe not, because that third-rate feminism is its own little thing.
I will tell you, my data is way out of date. In New York State, up till 2003 and 4, it was 7% of dads got awarded custody. Now, mothers got primary. The way it worked was it was like 80-something% was primary mother, right, and then 7 was primary father, and the rest was 50-50. That was one of the things we were using in our bill, is to say, hey, how is this possible that it's 80% versus 7%? You know, if the court and the law is working equally, blah, blah, blah. Didn't work, but hey, we tried. Interesting one. Why is there no DNA testing for children? Ooh, there's a trigger one. Like at birth.
Mostly because I think there's no who's the natural audience to hire a lobbyist to push that.
Exactly. Yeah.
They haven't figured out yet. And I think when 23andMe and all of those DNA testing companies figure out, like, oh, if this was actually court ordered, we have more money, they will do it. I am a huge proponent of that. I think we should make it automatic.
I
Every
do too.
child born should be
I
tested
agree.
automatically. Even if we just limited it to just parentage and then immediately destroyed the data afterwards so that we didn't have all those privacy concerns going forward, which is the natural argument against this. You know,
Right. Yep.
There was a movie called Gattaca. Remember Gattaca?
I
Like
don't think
20,
I ever
25 years
yeah,
ago.
I don't think I ever saw that one.
Oh, it was brilliant. Beautiful movie.
Now I'll go looking for it. Let me make a note.
Oh, it's gorgeous movie. Like visually gorgeous, great storyline. I forget the actor, but it's all about how you can genetically create people and how genetics becomes like a very big factor in people's success and where they end up in life. So there's some arguments against it from that perspective, but we can get around those.
Okay.
I think we will hopefully get there. And the men should be pushing for it. Because
yes, guys.
about 25% of dads are raising kids that they think are theirs that aren't.
That's another whole show. I'm going to do that one down the road. I'm going to probably bring you on as the legal expert on that.
That sounds like fun.
Yeah. We kind of touched on this one. What are the rights of a father actually in a divorce? I think we've pretty much covered that one.
Yeah, divorce is easy. So the one that they don't know is the paternity one,
right?
Where they don't realize that just being on the birth certificate doesn't give them anything other than the obligation to pay support.
True. If my wife and I come to court with an agreement for our divorce that we worked out, what are the chances of the judges approving it? I know the answer, but I'll let you answer.
I'll say 99%.
I was going to say very good was going to be my answer. You know, it's
there are certain times where a judge will review the judgment and there'll be like something that's technically wrong that needs to be fixed. But basically, if you come to an agreement, they're going to rubber stamp it.
And that's how my second divorce was. We worked the whole thing out ourselves. It was essentially rubber stamped. I mean, we worked it all out, handed it. We just used one attorney for both of us. And he was like, no, you got to go get it. I'm like, no, I'll represent myself. I'll go pro se because you know, just review it, make sure it's legal, send it to the judge. We never set foot in a courtroom. So ask why does the Government Federal Bar Association, didn't know there was such a thing, feel the need to define, monetize, and license marriage? That's
okay. I know who that guy is.
Okay.
who submitted that.
Okay.
At least in theory, I know who that guy is. That's someone who got really hurt.
Yeah. That's a subject for another day. That's a whole other. We're not trying to dismiss your question, but because I get it too. Is a prenup valid when both parties sign off? We answered that. I'm just going down the questions, so bear with me.
No worries.
Interesting. What are the basic constitutional rights of a father? Are they the same as the mother, or are they different? And we're going to talk as far as legally, not in practice.
So legally, they would be the same.
Exactly.
You know, liberty, interest, pursuit of happiness, all that good stuff. But you know, parentage is actually not mentioned in the Constitution.
It's not.
Minor issue. People forget about that.
Yeah. What's on paper is not what's in practice always either.
Yeah.
I'm trying to paraphrase this one. So why should someone who's been cheated on, so she cheated, why should he be ordered to pay child support? So apparently,
I'm gonna fill in the blank a little bit there.
Yeah, I think you have to.
During a marriage, we have a presumption during a marriage that any child born is of the marriage, meaning that child is presumed to be from that father's sperm. And we do that historically, we've done that to protect the sanctity of marriage and for inheritance rights of legitimate versus illegitimate kids.
Right. Genetics
have caught up to that sort of.
It's raising holy hell, I think, in the courts.
Well, there's an issue. Yeah. You know, like in California, you've got a 2-year window. When your wife gives birth, you've got 2 years to contest whether or not you're actually the father. And after 2 years, like, no, game over. We're done. We're not opening this. Like, you had your opportunity. You're not going to do it. You're taking the responsibility because you're married.
Mm-hmm. You
There's
are
rights and responsibilities of
right.
marriage. It's a freaking contract,
I
which is, of
believe
course, I
New
probably ought to do.
Yeah, I believe New York was 2 years also, and
Easily.
it's amazing how good the marriages are in those 2 years. But 2 years
Isn't
in one
it?
day, been there, done that, seen that. In general, would a settlement that is in the works be considered a marital asset if it's completed and dispersed after filing for divorce? So probably like a judgment or a settlement that you've won somehow is what I guess they're saying. Would that become a marital property? I guess
I'm
depends on the state,
there's
right?
I typical lawyer, like I need to know more information because if it's a personal injury award, it could be specifically just for that person,
Mm-hmm.
for their pain and suffering, their damages. Part of that, if that's for lost wages, that could then be considered community property and part of the marital assets.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a yes and.
Yeah. And that's the honest answer with a lot of these questions, guys. That we're trying to answer them, but there's a lot of gray area on a lot of these, and it's
Yeah.
there's no black and white as much as the law
Like
likes to
that's a
think.
perfect example of
Yep,
how you ask me a family law question
yep,
that crosses into personal
into
injury
yep, yep.
and classification. I mean, it's just like, oh my
It's
God.
craziness. We kind of touched on this, but I'll ask it. Why do men have to prove beyond a showdown of a doubt, meant shadow of a doubt, an accusation, yet a woman only has to say, we kind of touched on it with the domestic violence. She's, I just have to say I am afraid, and she gets awarded the TRO. He's got to prove he's not.
I blame
Anything
Disney.
Disney, go do tell.
It's all the little, everybody wants to be a Disney princess.
Ah, okay,
All the girls
got
are
it.
taught, like, you deserve better. You should
Yep.
have a prince charming on a white horse. And they buy into that crap. And frankly, the straight men buy into that crap. And they live by it for a very long time until, they realize, like, hey, I'm getting shafted here. And then it's a little too late.
I love how you phrase the straight man because I agree with you. I have one of my best friends is gay, right? But he hid it until now. I knew him, God, 20 years before he came out. But now that he's out, he don't hold anything back, and I just love him to death because man, he tells it like it is, and I think it's awesome that he does.
One of the nice things about being a single gay man fighting for dads is I get to say shit that other people don't.
Exactly, and he's like, "Oh yeah, I'll say it because I can say it,"
Right.
And but anyway, you're not going to be able to answer this fully, but how do you get out of alimony for life? You don't.
Yeah, well, again, there's a million factors that go into that. But in California, we have what's called a Gavron warning. It's in marriage of Gavron, and it's in our code section. The parties are supposed to become self-supporting after a reasonable amount of time. And if you think about it, it makes sense. You've got a marriage where husband was the breadwinner, wife stayed home, raised the kids for like 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
Now going back into the workforce, yeah, there's probably going to be some retraining to be involved. There's some new skills that have to be polished. She's going to need some support, but at some point, she needs to become self-supporting. That's a warning we give to litigants. Like, you have an obligation here.
Right.
And that's a way to get out of it is if they're not doing anything to upgrade their skills, the fact that they're not doing something is reason to terminate their support.
Got it. Yeah, it's interesting because back in the day, basically once she got alimony, it was for life. I know of women that did not get remarried, just lived with a guy.
That's
whole
common.
Yeah,
that
very common. Very common.
That happens all the time.
I'm going to shorten.
And we actually have a code section on that. If you're
really?
cohabitating with someone, if you're cohabitating with someone, that can be grounds. Because people don't get married, and the courts recognize that.
So they're finally making a little bit of change. The legislature probably had to codify it first, and
tiny bit.
Hey, I'm looking for any win I can get, right, my friend?
I hear you.
I'm just gonna kind of shorten this one because, the person listened to the book called The Respondent. I'm not familiar
Oh
with
yeah,
it.
by Greg
Are
Ellis.
you familiar
I've
with it? I'm
been
not.
I've been peppered with questions about it. I haven't had a chance
I
to read
have.
it or
I'm
listen to
gonna
it
have to
yet.
go get it.
So I'm like, I don't know.
It's mentioned that some of the lawyers will purposely not share settlement offers with the other party. It is alleged this is done on purpose to further delay and increase profit of lawyers. Does this actually happen? I'm going to say no, not much. I'm sure it does. And is it unlawful on the part of the attorneys? Good question.
It's completely unethical,
Right.
and I could lose my license for that.
Yeah.
No matter how absurd the offer is, I have to convey it to my client.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I've had in 24 years, I've had one client who I trusted so implicitly. We've been through so many battles,
Mm-hmm.
and they set limits. They're like, unless the offer is this, this, and this, don't even waste my time.
Right.
I'm like, put that in writing and I'll do it.
Yeah. I mean, my
But other than
experience,
that, we have to.
I have never seen a lawyer that wasn't at least willing to go to the other side and say, here's the offer, or vice versa.
You have to.
You have to, right. Um, what do you do if you have a corrupt custody evaluator? You're going to get me going on gals, guardian ad litems.
That's a whole other top. It's a whole other. That's a whole other 2
man.
hours.
You catch them on tape plotting in a biased way, and the judge won't allow the tape because of free speech concerns. So basically, when you're dealing with a bad guardian ad litem, I guess I'm going to paraphrase it. Is there anything you can do?
It probably wasn't free speech.
Yeah, it wasn't. No,
it wasn't. It was probably lack of foundation, hearsay, illegal recording. Yeah, would be my guess.
Fun story. So I call her a gal because I just don't like saying guardian ad litem. So my attorney, Karen, had this philosophy on guardian ad litems. They're the ones that could barely get through law school and can't make a living, and that's why they become guardian ad litems. I just now I know some very, very good ones, but there are some bad ones.
I'm going to suggest that that's not a completely inaccurate description.
Yeah.
That said, I do have several friends that do minors. We call them minors counsel.
Yep.
Same thing. And they're very passionate about the kids, and they're really good lawyers. And
I hate to generalize because there are some very, very good ones. And I think I'll say majority of them have the children's best interest at heart. There are some bad ones. Don't get me wrong. And,
no question.
And, I had to deal with one. And to quote the judge, when he looked at her and said, he knows more about the law than you do, you might want to listen to him. That was a sweet day in my life. Oh, yeah. Oh,
that transcript, I hope.
Oh, actually, I do. Discuss effective strategies for bringing parental alienation to light. This could be another whole show. When an ex created a disastrous situation that PA is now a factor in the lives of the children, they become alienated from the target parent. That's a whole show. Give me the 1 minute response to that.
I will come back and do a whole show with you on it.
Yeah.
If you really want to know, if you really want to learn about parental alienation, you go to my TikTok, you watch some of my TikToks on that.
Mm-hmm.
You go to pachecklist.com and you download the form that I've got to decide, is it really parental alienation or is it high conflict? Because there's a difference and they're treated differently. You go to YouTube and you watch my interview on the Men's Family Law channel, where I interviewed America's top parental alienation lawyer, Ashish Joshi. He wrote the book on litigating parental alienation, which you should buy. Mm-hmm. It's only about maybe that thick, probably $150, which is a lot, I get. But it's a good book. And the interview I did with him was excellent. You go to isnaf.info. It's isnaf.info to learn more about it. And then you go to pasg.info, which is the Parental Alienation Study Group. Mm-hmm. And you talk on there. You can post to the forum looking for experts and on what is it, how to treat it, how to litigate it. Yeah, we could go on for a couple hours here, buddy. We could do a whole class on that.
And having dealt with it with my kids, I we'll have to table it because you're right. That's a whole show in and of itself.
Yeah.
It is a serious issue. It is, in my
It is a
opinion,
term that is overused by many people, misunderstood by others, and
fair.
vilified by a third.
Yep. And I would argue it's the toughest thing I ever had to deal with was that because when your 8-year-old daughter says, I don't want to see my father anymore, I hate him,
Yeah.
and uses verbiage that no 8-year-old would use, that
Right.
was probably, well, not probably, it was the most crushing part of that whole scenario for me.
Yeah.
That was, and I was right there when she said it, and it was like,
Sure.
man. Do you base your fees on the size of the estate? I'll let you answer that one.
No, I base my fees on my hourly, which is outrageous. Um, and okay, so let me give you a quick primer on lawyers.
Go ahead.
You can pay me my hourly rate, which is outrageous, or you can negotiate with me to pay me half my hourly rate, which is not outrageous, and I'm just going to double bill you.
I hadn't heard that
Because
one before.
I'm gonna earn what I'm gonna earn.
Exactly, and you deserve it.
And like these people who are like, well, would you work for only $2.50 an hour? I'm like, sure, I'm gonna bill you for every text message, every time I think about you in the shower, every email, every time I do anything having to. Sure, you know what your bill's gonna be? 4 times what it would
Yeah.
be if you just pay my regular hourly and made it easy on me. I charge a high hourly rate for a reason. A, I know what I'm talking about. But B, I hate billing. I
Okay.
hate tracking every text message. It is such an annoyance factor. If you're going to make me do that, you're going to pay a lot more.
Fair enough. And by the way, I get the other side of it, the sentiment on it, but a good lawyer is worth every penny, and I
Yeah.
am the one to tell you that.
And a good lawyer will tell you when your case sucks and you should just fold.
And if they're not telling you that, you got a problem. You know.
And if they're lowering their rate and not telling you
Oh,
that,
no, that's. Mm-mm. I mean, I paid $400 an hour back 20 years ago. That's how expensive she was. I'm sure she's way higher than that now, but
standard in Los Angeles for my experience level,
mhm.
somewhere between 6 and 1,000 an hour.
Okay, that's probably where she is right about now too. I would
Yeah.
kind of assume that too.
Any big metro area, you're probably
Would
going
have
to be
paid that.
paying
Yeah,
that.
and guys, it adds up fast, right? So
It
don't
does.
don't go to them for emotional support. That's not their training anyway. Go see a
No, they should be
therapist.
joining the
There you,
dadsupportgroup.com.
there you go. All right, a couple more, and then we'll wrap things up. What kind of custody is recommended that suits the dad? Joint or sole custody?
Well, I think the question probably needs to be rephrased as to what kind of custody is best for the kids.
That's what I was. It's funny. I was thinking it's not about the dad; it's about the kids.
And it's a mistake many dads make.
Yes.
When they're going into court and they're pounding the drum for my time, my time, my time, you're telegraphing to the judge that this is about you and your ego.
Mm-hmm. Phrase
And
it.
that's not a good look.
Phrase it as our time,
Our time, children's
children's
time.
time, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Very, very good point there because you're right. If you start, what'd you say, pounding the table, you've lost before you've started.
Right.
You know.
I've got a case right now where the best interest of the child, frankly, is sole legal, sole physical to dad because mom's a train wreck.
Right. Is there, just to wrap up on that, and then we'll close things down? I hate that phrase, best interest of the child. I know why it exists. I know the legal stuff behind it.
Yeah.
We could, again, 5-hour show on just that. But
Easy.
in your experience, because I genuinely believe most of the judges do have the best interest of the family at heart. I do. Call me naive. Feel free. But I think in general, they get frustrated sometimes. They are overworked because they see many cases. I hate defending them, by the way. It's killing me to say these things. But do you think they actually do think best interest of the child when they're determining cases in general?
In general, I think so. And in general, I think it's a horrible, I think we put them truthfully in a horrible position.
Good point. Yeah. They're
I
in a
mean,
no-win.
think about, okay, so here I am, I'm the judge. Okay. Mike and Julie come to me and they've got little Bobby, and I get papers from Julie that says, this is what our family is. This is why I'm a better parent. I get papers from Mike that say, this is why I'm a good dad. And I've got to deal with how is Julie going to get raised for the next, let's call it 12 years. Okay, they're coming in kids 6.
Mm-hmm.
I have an hour to read mom's paperwork, an hour to read dad's paperwork. So I'm 2 hours into this. And at the hearing, I'm going to hear maybe from each of their lawyers for, on average, let's call it maybe 15, 20 minutes. So let's be generous and call it a half-hour piece. I'm 3 hours in to making a determination on what this little girl's going to live for the next 12 years.
Not a position
I
I
don't
would
want to be,
want.
frankly, I don't want to be doing that.
I would not want to be having to make that decision. You know,
No, it's a horrible position to be in.
I despise the system.
And the fact that these parents are fighting
Yeah.
tells me that, like, that in and of itself means there's a problem.
Right.
And I don't have enough time or information to get to it. I don't have the training. I'm not a mental health professional. I've not been taught parenting. I've not been taught early childhood development. I've not been taught mid-child development, let alone trying to figure out all of the underlying psychodynamics of what's going on between these two people and why can't they get along? Because they got along long enough to, like, make the kid. I mean, granted, it was a quick 30 seconds, but really, there probably was a coffee or something beforehand.
I can hear the comments coming after we just said what we both just said. And I'm all, bring them on, guys. Hey, the bottom line is everything David's saying, and what I've tried to say also is do everything you can to take the animosity out of it, knowing that you only control what you can do, right?
Yeah.
You have no control on the other side. In my case, I was dealing with Satan. I first to tell you that, all right? But I never lost my composure. I did what I could do. I can look back now and say I did the very best I could do. Did I screw up sometimes? Absolutely.
Yeah.
But in the end, I did everything to the best of my ability. I listened to my attorney. I didn't like what she was telling me. She, there was times she's like, "Dude, you don't have a chance. Why? I'm not even gonna file it for you." She would be, and I love that she did that.
Yeah.
Do the best you can for yourself to take the animosity out of it. Yes, you're going to be dealing sometimes with crazy people. People, I said, not women, people, because I know that one's coming.
Oh, yeah.
But do it not just for yourself, but for the kids also, because I am also the child of a divorce. My mother made my father's life a living hell. And you would have thought I would have learned from that, by the way, because I ended up marrying my mother down the road. Satan was...
No, that's why you ended up marrying your mother.
Exactly, right? But do what you can so that as I sit here now, some 17 years past all that, probably 15 actually, but anyway, I can look back and go, you know what? I did what I could. And I controlled what I could control. I can't control her. Listen to your attorney. Get help outside. Those are the things I would say. Anything you want to add to that?
I think the big thing is if you're gonna go in and represent yourself, you've got to do your homework.
Oh, you got to know
I
law.
I posted a TikTok yesterday, the day before, with, like, the basic books just to get to understand, like, what you're actually going to be dealing with. If you're going to be arguing your own case, go get an evidence code. Learn what evidence is, because you're going to be far more respected if you actually know what you're talking about, rather than just going in and saying, like, well, here's the evidence. It's like,
Yeah, don't work that way. No.
it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
And then you want to turn around and be like, well, the system's against me. It's like, no, you don't walk onto the football field against the Dallas Cowboys dressed for tennis.
No, that would not work out well. I'm a Giants fan, so
not going to work out well.
Along those lines, I did represent myself a lot of times. I spent hours and hours researching. The one thing that I would say that was a weakness in the courtroom when I was representing myself was I didn't know when to object. That's
the evidence code. It
yeah,
comes with the objections.
yeah.
You can buy it.
I studied it. I read that stuff, but even still, I remember sitting there going, should I object? Should I object? And I almost always defaulted to objecting, and the judge would go, shut up. It's not what he would say, but no. But more often than not, though, he would go, sustained, But that's something, to your point, you've got to know how to do that, when to do it, because you don't want to overdo it either.
Right.
If you're not willing, I don't want to put a number on it, but if you're not willing to spend a few 100 hours, that's probably what I did, studying this, don't do it, because you could end up really hurting yourself in your case. That said, if you think you can do it, and my opinion, it's something to look at. I'm not saying do it. Just
that's literally why I created the Dad's Action Pack. You go to dadsactionpack.com. It's specifically to teach guys, like, here's how to get the very, very, very basics of representing yourself in court. Like, here's how to write a declaration. Here's what needs to be in the declaration. Here's how to become a better public speaker, because that's going to be an issue. Because, if you think about it, what are the two reasons people really hire lawyers? One, they talk too much. They don't know when to have to shut up. They'll talk themselves out of a win. Or two, they don't know what to say.
Right.
So it's just basic things of, like, how to speak properly to a judge and not come across as scared or nervous or too anxious. Understand, like, it's okay to take pauses.
Mm-hmm.
Getting that confidence back will help you when you're going in, on top of then actually having to know the law and the procedure.
That's a good point. Maybe that was one of the reasons I did fairly well, is because I've been public speaking my whole life. So I have one of those.
It's a huge factor.
I have no fear.
It's a huge factor, guaranteed.
Guaranteed.
There's a reason why Toastmasters is the most successful public speaking training program out there, because they make leaders.
Well, I've been in
why are people successful? Why did Steve Jobs spend 8 hours for every minute he spent on stage? He rehearsed for like 8 hours for like every minute. Yeah. I mean, it was insane.
It's like being in a band. I always talk about that. I would be on stage in front of 1,000 people. I had no fear whatsoever, because we put all the practice time in ahead of time. I had a blast on stage. I'm a stage whore. I freely admit it. Right. I love being in front of people. I've done, seminars for guys where I go in and talk about domestic violence, and there'll be 50, 100 guys there sometimes. And it's like, no fear, none.
Do you say stage whore? I say media whore. Tomato.
6 of one, half dozen of the other, right? All right, exactly. David, we're going to wrap things up. Do me a favor, would you? You've rattled off a bunch of ways to get your products and your programs and all that. And can you share with the guys? Because by now the women have already turned it off, unless they're the stepmom.
Oh, no. The women are watching. Let me tell you, they're going to be watching.
I know Lindsay's watching. I'll bet a few of the others, Lauren, Emily.
New girlfriends, the second wives, they're watching.
Oh, yeah, they are.
They're a big part of my audience.
Mine too. Mine is mostly guys, but the ones that are there, and they're very passionate, and I love them to death for what they do. So just share how people can reach out and get the programs and all that, please.
The easiest way is just go to unionofdads.com, and that's going to take you to exactly where you need to go. You can get my playbook, which will teach you the basics of what you're going to be facing. It'll take you to the contempt course, which will teach you, once you've got a court order, how to actually present a contempt to the judge. You can get my Dad's Action Pack, which will teach you how to actually present in court and what to present so that you can be successful when you're going to represent yourself in front of the judge. It's unionofdads.com.
David, I cannot thank you enough for giving us a couple hours. It's been a couple hours, believe it or not, of your time.
It has, but I gotta say, it's gone really quick.
Flies by. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure that those who have been watching have hopefully learned a little bit and got a better understanding of how things work in the courts and how to approach things. I thank you sincerely for coming on and sharing your knowledge. And I definitely want to have you back on probably more than a few times, because there's so many topics we can talk about that, we need to break them down. I just wanted to kind of do an overview today, but there are so much out there, and both of us are trying to help the guys, right? I'm an old fart. I admit it. I'm almost 60. I've been through it. This is all behind me as far as family court. I'm trying to help the younger ones to see what it can be, what it's like, how to deal with it. I've been through the battles. I've been through the wars. I came out the other side. I survived. And even to this day, it sometimes still affects me, but I know you sincerely want to help the guys too. And I appreciate all you do. And give them your TikTok handle and your YouTube also, because I think that's important. They follow you.
I appreciate that. So there's 2 TikTok handles. There's Union of Dads, and there's also Dad's Law School. And those are the same things on YouTube. We're building out those channels also.
Excellent.
So Union of Dads, which is just like that, Union of Dads, and then Dad's Law School.
Well, I'll put it on the screen when I do the post-production for this, so they'll see it.
Cool.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up. Hey, everybody, thanks for watching this far. If you're 2 hours in watching this, you got to give me a like. Come on, right? Hit that little like button down there, because we put a lot of effort into this. And subscribe to the channel. As I said, we're trying to grow this channel. I'm trying to help as many guys as I want. People like David are going to be coming on and sharing their knowledge. It's all to help you guys. So by subscribing, it helps get the word out. More guys can see the information, can share it with each other. We're trying to build a group here and help each other out. That's really what this is about. So give me a like, give me a subscribe, and a couple other things. 1, share this, please. But 2, comment below. Let us know what you think about what we had to say, even if you hate us for it, because some of you do. I know. I like to hear both the good and the bad. With respect, though, all right? Telling me I'm bald, I've already heard it. It's not going to help you. Telling me I look like Walter from Breaking Bad, I already heard it. But I do want to hear your comments. And if there's other topics that you would like me to address or you would like David to address, please comment below. Let us know. We want to help you out. So, David, I'm just going to come back to you real quick here to say thank you once again. And
thank you.
I appreciate everything you did. All right.
My pleasure.
On that note, guys, have an awesome day. This is Dan. Men Need to Be Heard. Check it out.